Good morning, good afternoon, good night, wherever you are tuning in from. I wanted to just say welcome, welcome, welcome to the Blackout live from New York with me, your host, Tasemere. Just to set the stage in case some folks aren't used to my show and what we do. The purpose is to celebrate Black folks across the diaspora and to have an open dialogue about Black economics, how we reimagine trends in business and explore the magic that we have. So let's jump right in. Unlike previous shows, we will not have a commutator or a guest with us today. So we are going to go back to some of the things that we did in the very beginning, which is reviewing the news, as I know many people do not do this. So we are going to talk about some articles that I have gathered up that I feel is very, very interesting. And I would really like to get you guys' feedback and your thoughts about what I wanted to share. But before we do that, I wanted to shout out the brunch pitch that just took place on Tuesday in Baltimore, Maryland. We had an amazing time. Thank you so much to our judges who came out to judge the competition, which was Mark Clark, Mike Nice, Sean Stinnett, Erica, Austin Buck, and Brandon Andrews. We had an amazing time. We presented 4 DMV entrepreneurs. One entrepreneur walked away with a cash prize and some technical assistance. So we cannot wait to come back next year and do the brunch pitch. And I know you guys might be saying, why next year? Because we're about to get into the holiday season and we know people are not going to be concentrating on pitching over Thanksgiving, Christmas, and New Year's. And so we want to be mindful of that. So some articles that I wanted to get into, let me go ahead and share my screen really quickly. I have a lot to go over today. So COVID in education, it's specifically college enrollment and college students. I just put that article up really quickly. There is a decrease in the submissions to colleges and re-enrollment into college since COVID, and I wanted to just bring that to you guys' attention because a lot of students are now thinking through non-traditional work opportunities that might not require a 4-year degree. I also think that some students are considering the fact that they learn differently and maybe going to a classroom setting doesn't necessarily work for their learning styles. I think COVID really fleshed out that. I know I probably would not have been successful if I had to learn online because I would have needed, that interaction and that face-to-face to ask my questions and engage with my counterparts. But some students really flourished, learning remotely, while others might have had a more challenging time. And the need to pay for college has gone up really, really exponentially if you compare year after year. So college is consistently costing more to attend, and some students are really, thinking through maybe doing a certificate program, maybe going into an apprentice program. And I think that this is necessary because for a long time we have seen that thank you, Donnie. Hey, Donnie. For the longest time, we have seen a overwhelming amount of folks going into college that left traditional jobs unmet. So when you think about the plumbers and you think about the electricians and you think about elevator operators and you think about folks that might work in transportation, those are very critical to our economy and our life, just as much as lawyers and doctors and accountants. And so I like the fact that we're getting back to a more balanced workforce. So I'm all here for it. I just wanted to bring that up to you guys today in case you didn't know. Another article that I wanted to mention, and I'm going to put it up on the screen, is happening in Alabama. Alabama prison strike organizers, they're at war for their life and their freedom. I think that we should really dive into this because I know that this topic is often discussed behind closed doors. And I think that we should bring it to the forefront. So let me just share this article because I like us to all be on the same page when we're talking about different things. So this is the article, Alabama prison strike organizer, they're at war for their life and freedom. Donnie Glover, who is the spearhead of this network, did a Black Wall Street Awards in Harlem in August. And there were some folks that were formerly incarcerated that actually received awards, and they were bringing to light some of the challenges of people on the inside and food and just human rights issues that we don't know about because we might not be connected to that that institution in a meaningful way. And so we might just be going about our lives and not really thinking about it. But some folks that are behind bars are really having a difficult time eating and getting the necessities that they need because in New York State, at least what I learned is that there are certain vendors that you can only purchase from that will deliver to that particular prison or correctional facility. And so if families, friends, supporters of the person that is doing time do not have the money to pay for those items, they just don't get it. Okay. So I wanted to definitely bring this up because I think this is something that we have to pay attention to. So conditions in Alabama violate the Eighth Amendment protections against cruel and unusual punishment, according to the Department of Justice. I'm reading right here, which took the rare step in 2020 of suing the state for failing to protect the people in its custody. People incarcerated in Alabama face excessive force from correctional officers, a high risk of death, physical violence, and sexual abuse from other prisoners, and are forced to live in unsafe and unsanitary conditions, the DOJ wrote in its complaint. I think we need to pay attention to this. I think that we need to get more involved if we can, and we need to bring light to this. This is happening in Alabama, but I'm pretty sure this is happening across the country. And I think that we need to collectively think about, not just when we're thinking about the criminal justice system and quote unquote Black Lives Matter and police brutality, we sometimes forget to mention what's actually happening to people that are in prison and the support and the services that they are not receiving. So yes, let's definitely talk about it. As Donnie is mentioning here, I think that we have to take care of our people, and they're people just like we are. As we go on, I'm sure everybody tuning in has heard about this whole cannabis industry and what it means for Black and brown people's involvement. And so I can't not talk about it, especially since Joe Biden is pardoning folks, in case you didn't get the message loud and clear. This just came out. Biden to pardon thousands convicted of marijuana possession. This is one of the first steps that is being taken in the criminalization of marijuana, as I'm sure many people know. In some states like New York City, New Jersey, definitely out in California, there are some conditional marijuana licenses. I think also in Washington, D.C. as well, well, you can apply to participate legally in the industry. And a lot of Black and brown folks are thinking about getting into cannabis. However, the regulations are really hard to interpret. And there's different, just to get the license can be very, very expensive. And it can be very complicated to know how to fill out that document in order to be approved. And so Joe Biden is encouraging all the states to rethink about how they handle cannabis. And I've spoken about this before. And from my personal perspective and or opinion, I think that this industry is very tricky, right? When you think about legacy and just terms that are being used, I do think that Black folks and brown folks think that this is the opportunity to get into the marketplace, which may or may not be true. Equal to that, I think that when you're thinking about growing and where the money actually is, it's really in the grow. And so when you think about growing, you think about farmers and you think about how many Black folks own land that you can farm on, and then think about how many Black folks actually grow cannabis. I think the cultivation is probably going to be the most lucrative. And I think that a lot of Black folks and brown folks are thinking about the consumer end of the butters and the infusing and cafes and smoking bars and things like that. I'm not quite sure how the regulations are going to be impactful to that. I also know that you can't get money from a bank. So unlike traditional businesses where you can go and take out a business loan, you really don't have the option to do that here. And because there aren't regulations around banking, you have to really be strategic around what you are doing with your money, and how you're moving your money and your cash flow. Also on digital platforms, you can't really market the same way that you can, a regular t-shirt business. If you're using hemp, Instagram isn't going to allow you to market on that platform the same way that you can for a non-cannabis business. So these are all things to take into consideration if you are thinking about getting into the industry. A selfish plug, I'm working with a group of entrepreneurs out in Harlem, New York, and we are putting on these elevated experiences and informational sessions where we are bringing from around the country, like the best people that had the most valuable information to share about what they have been doing in cannabis and how it can be applied for Black and brown folks. So hit me up if you want to know more. Moving into another topic that I think we should definitely talk about is homelessness. And I know one of my network mates, Laquita Chansey, is doing a lot of work in the Baltimore area around tiny homes. Denver sets to give 140 homeless people up to $12,000 in cash as part of basic income program. I think that this is interesting. I don't really know much about the policy and how it breaks down in the demographics, but to see a city at least attempting to address the issue is welcomed. I know that homelessness is impacting many cities across the country and really changing the fabric of communities and amenities and people's everyday lives. So it's also something that we desperately need to figure out because, I'm just saying, if we have money to send over to other countries to help them with what they have going on, we probably should be thinking about the people that need help right here. I'm just saying, thank you, Denver, for thinking about the homeless folks, wanting to see how this model works and how it could possibly be replicated. I wonder if it is opportunity to expand this program to to be longer than a year. How many people would that impact? How do you even get into the program? Very, very, very interested to know those details. Moving right along, I know we all remember Breonna Taylor. I do not have to go into depth about that. However, I do want to add here, have you guys not been seeing my articles? Oh my gosh. I do want to add here that Breonna Taylor, the district attorney for Breonna Taylor, might potentially or is going to resign. Who knows? The Louisville NAACP calls for Kentucky Attorney General to resign over Breonna Taylor case or face impeachment. So, is he going to resign? Is he not going to resign? Is he going to be impeached? Is he not going to be impeached? This is very, very, very interesting. But he's accused of siding with law enforcement instead of impartially weighing evidence against federally indicted officers. I know we all have been thinking, when is he going to go? Yeah, I'm going to just say it in case other folks don't want to say it. Very interested to see what he ultimately chooses to do. I hope he just bows out gracefully and resigns. I'm sure he doesn't want an impeachment on his record. So yeah, he might just want to resign and call it a day. Now, moving on, I have spoken about this with Fat Joe. Just want to bring this up again because I know we have folks that are thinking about getting into entrepreneurship, and I want to remind everybody that you gotta pay your taxes, okay? There's no way out of paying the taxes. And so, you guys remember Shakira? A Spanish court formally sends Shakira to trial for tax evasion. I don't know why people think that they don't have to pay their taxes. In Fat Joe's case, if you remember way back when I was talking about it, he said that he thought he had paid his taxes because he had been giving the money to his accountant, and his accountant hadn't been paying the IRS. Which happens often, and why I instruct my entrepreneurs that they should make sure that they are paying their own taxes. Something similar happened to Steve Harvey, where he thought that he was paying the taxes. He shared on Earn Your Leisure. If you haven't seen that episode, you should definitely watch it. He shared that what was happening was that I think his ex-wife and his CPA or his accountant were in cahoots, where they were withdrawing the amount of money that he had to pay in taxes. They were withdrawing it from the bank, but they were not paying the taxes. And he had assumed that because the money was coming out of his account, that it was going to his taxes, and it wasn't. And when it caught up to him, it was like going to be a kaboomy. It was going to be a big, big, big explosion. Just throwing this out there for people who are considering being entrepreneurs. Please, please, please make sure you are watching your money and equally making sure that you are paying the IRS. It is against the law to not pay your taxes, and eventually it will catch up to you. So please, please, please make sure you are paying your taxes. Now, let's go on the West Coast, because the West Coast has some things popping out there. California is trying to figure out these blackouts. So, dodging blackouts, California faces new questions on its power supply. I don't even know what to say. Extreme heat is testing the way energy is generated, delivered, and traded, and raising the prospect of prudential emergencies. Yeah, this is interesting to me. I know New York City, where I currently am, has had blackouts in the past, which has shut down the entire city, and you had to walk to where you wanted to go, and the street lights weren't working, and sometimes the towers for your where you would get your cell phone coverage were down as well. Now, this is super interesting because I thought California was using some wind energy, solar energy, having to think about climate change, which is also another big topic that we haven't broached here, but I think we have opportunity to talk about it. Very interesting things, and it's important for us to at least stay abreast of what is going on, because blackouts are real and it affects energy and how you do things and how you move around. So definitely want to talk about that. Snoop Dogg, also on the West Coast, has launched his own breakfast food line. You guys need to be keeping up with what these people are doing, because we can learn from what they are doing. So Snoop is opening up his own cereal line, and I believe he has partnered with Master P's company in order to do it, which is good to think about, because I have been seeing that in entertainment. And if you guys, have favorite actors or actresses, performers, rappers, artists, anything of the mix, I think we should definitely take heed on how they are structuring their generational wealth, because usually they are opening up businesses that either have nothing to do with entertainment or are spin-offs of what they currently are doing, which increases their wealth potential. And I think as we think about how do we generate wealth, we can take some best practices from them, and really sit and not just listen to the gossip of who's getting divorced or who's getting married and whose children are doing what and what they're wearing, but more so, where are they investing? And what are they investing in? And why are they putting their money in those places? Snoop has really taken over media. He has that show with Martha Stewart. He bought Death Row Records. He's like acquiring businesses. He's starting businesses, wondering what the strategy is behind that. But I think we can definitely learn something from that. And this brings me to my last article that I wanted to talk about today, which is very near and dear to me. This is how much Black women lose due to gender pay gap. I'm going to play this video. Hopefully you guys can hear it on your end. If it pops up. Okay.
Morning, a new study shedding light on how
So I wanted to definitely talk about this because we have a lot of discussion and talks around the gender pay gap. And as a whole, women are not, as the video stated, making what their counterparts are making for similar work. What I want to talk about is the wealth gap. So there's a pay gap with wages, and there is a wealth gap. And we are not talking about the wealth gap. And with the wealth gap, we're talking about entrepreneurship. So when you think about how many contracts are women getting compared to men, and this gets into the weeds of MWBE and the breakdown of contracts between the different races. So when you're thinking about maybe someone is married or they're friends or whatever it is, and they form a business together, and a guy says, "Hey, I'm going to put this woman on this business infrastructure, so that way we can get the status of a MWBE or woman-owned business, depending on the race of the woman, right?" But when you think about Black women who own their own businesses and how we already, as a group, are not getting a lot of contracts, and then you think about how many Black women are getting contracts, that's a problem. Now, when you think about investment opportunities and you think about venture capitalists and you think about who's really at quote unquote the cap table, I would encourage you to think about the gender roles there, where there's usually men at the cap table, not women. Women might be in supportive roles, but they might not own investment stakes. And then when you think about Black women, what does that mean? I mean, if you do not have the ability to be at the cap table with emerging businesses and investing in them and getting equity shares in a business and or advisory shares or stocks, or however your investment portfolio is going to break down, we are not talking about wages at that point. We're not talking about 80 cents on the dollar. We are talking about potentially millions, if not billions, of a disparity between the wealth gap. That's what I'm interested in knowing and understanding and figuring out solutions around actually generating wealth. How are women going to generate wealth if one of the vehicles to generate wealth is entrepreneurship, and then another level is investing in businesses, and we do not have the capital to do it compared to our counterparts, whether we're talking about just men or we're talking about racial demographics? That really puts us and our families and our legacy really behind the 8 ball. I don't even know if it's the 8 ball at that point, but that is something that I think we should definitely be talking about more, having more discussion around wealth generation and what that actually means with entrepreneurship and more women getting in the game of owning their own businesses and actually being able to generate real wealth for their families. Love the discussion about wages. I think it's important, but for me and what I do, I am always more interested in how this impacts entrepreneurship and actually generating wealth. I don't have a job. I don't work for anyone else. I work for myself. So I'm not worried about not paying myself the same as a male counterpart, whatever race my male counterpart might be. I'm interested in getting at the cap table and figuring out how do I become, or my company becomes part of these deals, because if they do wind up being acquired or merging or selling and I am not at the cap table with 10%, 8%, 5% equity or some kind of shares on the stock market, you know, I'm already behind the 8 ball. And what does that mean for my children and my children's children and, you know, the rest? So this is Tasemere with the Blackout Live from New York. Thank you so much for tuning in on these articles that we reviewed today. They were fascinating. Definitely want to shout out Donnie Glover. You see him on the bottom in this ticker. Please go pick up his book. Also, be sure to watch our programming Monday through Sunday. Various times we have various shows, but Monday mornings we have a show at 9 a.m. every Monday by yours truly, Donnie Gulliver. And then you can always catch me on Saturday mornings at 10:15. My apologies, I did start a little late today, but don't tell nobody. 10:15, the Blackout Live from New York, and some of my other network mates have their shows Monday through Friday at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard and 8 p.m. Eastern Standard. Looking forward to talking to you soon. Ciao.